Hello and welcome to this part in the How to Get Faster series on cubing worlds. This part is going to cover how to get faster at 4x4 blindfolded and 5x5 blindfolded. If you don't know me already, my name is Ollie. Well, I'm generally known as Ollie on the speed solving forums. My full name is Ollie Frost, and I'm currently second officially in the world for both 4 and 5 blindfolded. Just a warning about the length of the video. I know it seems almost ridiculously long, and you shouldn't be put off by that because it is divided into sections, one by piece type. So if you're looking for specific techniques on how to improve your wings or a certain aspect of your solve, any sort of type of piece type, for whether it's 4 or 5, you can just literally look for the piece type that's most relevant to you. After that, it's divided into 4 BLD Memo, 5 BLD Memo. The 4 BLD Memo includes a example solve as well, so that adds on some extra time, and general practice tips as well in a separate section. So you have 3 basic goals if you've just started learning and using R2. Number 1 is to make it as brain dead as possible. I know it sounds like a bit of a paradox as it's blindfolded cubing, but you shouldn't be what I mean is you shouldn't be thinking about setup moves in the slightest. The only thing that should be going on in your mental process is thinking, what is the next piece in my memorization? I should never be thinking of the moves to get this piece up here, for example. I should instantly know it's U, R2, U prime, R2, undo. And that for this target here, for example, it's the long 4 mover, but on the other side. I should never ever be thinking about my setup moves, so goal number 1 is, like I said, to make it as brain dead as possible. The only the best way of practicing that is basically doing sighted solves. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of sighted solves and what I mean by them. You don't really have to memorize the whole cube either, you just literally practice your execution method, but I'd recommend doing as many solves as you can, just solving wings, and you can time yourself as well, so you generally know, you can see yourself getting faster with them. Goal number 2 is to start thinking ahead as well. So if I'm executing, for example, this case I'm going to set up, it's up left if you're thinking about a 3x3, to right up. So while I'm executing B, which I know is a few moves, it's a 4 move setup, I should be thinking to myself, what's the next piece in my memorization, which for me would be P. So while I'm executing that, I should be instantly thinking of what my next step will be. And that doesn't just apply for memorizing things in pairs. If I have a sequence of A, B, C, D, while I'm executing A, I should be thinking about doing B. While I'm doing B, I should be thinking about doing C, etc. One tip I have for that is to memorize in pairs, because if you're just recalling pairs of letters, you get a little bit more extra time to think about what your next pair will be, because you have to execute the first letter of the pair, then the second letter, and it gives you an extra time because you're thinking of the pair rather than individual letters. So if you need help getting rid of pauses that way, I'd recommend doing that. Number 3 sounds obvious, and it sounds like the go-to advice, but it is literally just to start turning faster. Once you've got think ahead and your setup moves down, there should be no excuse to start thinking about turning speed. Once you've got down numbers 1, 2 and 3, the next logical step for R2 is advanced R2, and don't be put off by the name. Most people are, they think advanced and think, oh, it's probably too hard if I struggled with R2. It's really not. It's not much of a step up at all from basic R2. It's just very, very simple tricks that you need to know, and it's going to get you that extra bit faster, and it's also going to start introducing you to commutators as well. So I've set up a few cases here. I would, however, recommend going to Zane's. He's got some example solve videos of M2, and it will probably explain it a little bit better than I can. But in case you don't already know, I'm just going to go over the examples for advanced M2 for wings. So this first case here, it's sort of left front, if you're thinking of 3x3, to up left. By doing a U move there, I set up left to up back, which gives me now a nice 8 move commutator. Undo the setup move and put that back. It also saves me an extra 4 moves set up for this case here. This one to here, I can do a U2 to set up here to here. That saves this horrible L slice target. So by doing that, I'm setting it to a nice commutator there, and undo. Here, to write down a B move, or a B prime move, sets up this tricky target to the nice easy one. So I can do another nice 8 move commutator, and undo. And finally I've got this tricky case here to here, and it's the opposite way. So it's now a B move, so a super easy 8 move commutator, and undo the setup move. And one more case I just forgot to mention. Down front to left up to here, back down. That can easily be solved with a B2. Sets it up to the nice easy case up there. 8 move commutator. Undo the setup. But there are even more, if you're not happy with that, if you want to do a little bit more just to get them faster, there are a couple more tricks you can learn. And they're not so bad as well, but they basically involve commutators to solve these horrible L slice cases. And then you can learn the odd commutator as well to solve these horrible R slice ones. So the first must-know commutator to know is this. It's from your buffer to down back to back up left up there. So what this 8 move case does is basically solves 2 L slice targets when they're both next to each other in the cycle, and when they're both next to each other sort of like this when they're on the adjacent position. It's 8 moves long. It will cut that down from something like 20, it's like 20 plus moves, so you're going to save a lot of time and a lot of effort if you can set this case up. Small r, U2, R prime, D2, twice. And I'll just show you how it looks with the setup move, for example. So if you ever just have one L slice target and something else, which is quite easy to do, like this this left up target there, it could be the mirror, but I could set that up to the 8 mover, and it's that one algorithm that basically got me into comms. It's such a good time saver. You can consult an alg list if you're still not sure, but I don't really need to explain commutators here. This is just a how to get faster video. But if you can find a good algorithm list and learn some good cases for the front up right targets and the same on the opposite side, that's also going to save you a lot of moves and a lot of time overall. Okay, so for X centers, your first and most important goal is cutting down your thinking time. When I say thinking time, I mean the time it takes for you to picture the case in your head and try and relate it to one you already know, set it up, and actually solve it. So there's a couple of things you should do to cut down your thinking time. The first one is to actually learn a couple more algs. You should already know the basic few, which are it's the adjacent face com, if you've learnt from Dan's video, which is here to here to here, small r u2 r prime with a small d, and the opposite side. There's the adjacent face, sorry, the opposite face commutator, to there, to there. That's U2, a bit like that, and then it's the set that up. It's the interchange for solving your last two centers, which is a bit something like that. So you should know those 3 basic ones. I would really recommend learning just a couple more, and I will explain why in a minute, but I'd recommend learning these little beauties. So, it's an opposite case alg, opposite centers alg, it goes from here to here to here, and the reason why is because it's really finger trick friendly. So the alg is U, R2, U prime, L prime, and undo. The next case I'd really recommend is another type of opposite one, and that's also really fast. So it solves here to here to this back piece here, and it's U, R prime, U prime, L prime, and as you can see you can sort of finger trick with it, so it is really nice. As well as your cases like this, for example, where they're on adjacent faces, start thinking about doing algs like this instead, where you go from the other side, which saves you having to like rotate and then move your buffer and move this bit, when really you could just keep the cube as it is, save the rotation, and all you're doing is R, U to R prime, and instead of the D move, which you'd normally do, you'd do a D prime. Sorry, no, the D prime that you'd normally do, you'd go the other way and do a D. And it solves a case from the other side. And then one more that I use, but this one's purely optional. And it's quite similar to that first one. So it's here to here to here. And it's U, R, U prime, L2. So the reason why you should learn a couple of extra algorithms, I know it sounds like a bit of extra work, but it's completely worth it in the end. And what happens is when you're visualizing these algorithms, you're using an area of your brain called the visual cache, and what it's trying to do is relate the case to one you already know by shape, really. So I'll just demonstrate here. So if something doesn't quite match what you originally learned, so this is an example, it's sort of exactly the same but sort of mirrored. So what your brain would try and do is say, I'd put that there, I'd put that there, and I'd put that there, and that matches the case I already know in my head, and then I'd execute the alg and then do the setup moves. Try and not go wrong. So by learning a couple of extra algorithms, you actually give yourself more familiar cases to basically try and match to, which means you can actually end up doing less setup moves, which obviously is a bit quicker to execute, and you are a bit less likely to make a mistake as well because you're doing less setup moves. I generally find that if you do more setup moves for an alg, you're more likely to go wrong. So once you've got there, it's time to start experimenting with speed optimal algs and doing things like algorithms from the back. So I'll just show you an example. So not much business going on at the front. You've got a case that goes from here to the back to here, and for example I'd solve that with R, I'd bring that up to here with a U to insert it, D prime inserts that piece into here, and then do it all. So learning algorithm from the back is going to get you there, basically. It's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of moves overall. Start experimenting with things like rotations as well. Rotations can be your friend. So take this case for example. If I was maybe solving with a beginner's method of solving corners, I'd stick this one over there, and I'd probably put that one over there, you see, to try and solve it like that, which has a rotation and a lot of setup moves, so really it's not ideal. Just try rotating. This piece goes to here, which goes to here, and that can be done in quite a simple commutator here. So really, rotations can really help you. Similarly, if we wanted to go the other way. If I had a tricky case here, to X for example, bang, bang, bang. If I just rotate, I've now got here, to there, which is quite a simple algorithm. It's an 8 mover, and it's a D2 and around like that. The final tip I'd say for 4-blind centres is knowing how to solve your last 2 centres sort of as fast as you possibly can. What I mostly use now is Nicholas comms. So what it actually cycles is this piece to this piece to this piece, or it will be this piece to this piece to this piece, sorry. And it's one of the fastest algs you can possibly do, so you should know this from 4x4 already, so I'll just do it a bit slow. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The only problem with that particular alg is because it cycles here to here, well, it cycles these 3, so you've got to make sure that this piece is solved before you try and do that alg. Otherwise it's going to mess up with your memorization. I'll just I'll show you. So say I've got my blindfold on. I've got to remember to do these 2 at the end. I've got 2 unsolved centres there and my final 2 centres here. If I use my Nicholas comm and go 1, I'm going to think I'm finished and that these 2 I still need solving, but you see I've changed what I've memorised, so when I do my alg when I'm blindfolded, I'm going to be left with a DNF, as you can see. So it's knowing when and to use that. Another Nicholas comm as well that I use solves 2 opposite centres, and it's one of the fastest algs for doing opposite 2 centres. So it's just U, R2, U, L2. Again, I've got to make sure that this piece is solved, because I'm cycling this one, and this one, and I don't want to mess up my memorisation. We're going to start with the midges. In theory, there's very little you have to know if you've gone through wings already. The concepts are exactly the same, so the 3 things you're going to be thinking about are getting your setup moves and your algorithms as automatic as possible, thinking ahead to the next pair or the next target so that you can eliminate pauses and cut your times down that way, and then eventually once you've got those 2 basics it will be turning faster. The one way perhaps of getting even faster is just learning some very simple edge comms. So set this up. So for example, here to here, back and down, back to up front, I will generally rotate and do M prime, U2, M, U2. Nice and easy. Without the rotation, it solves this case from my buffer to up back to up front, M prime, U2, M, U2. The 5 movers, which is just a 4 mover, it's a setup to a 4 mover with a cancellation. So for example here to here, to here. Like that. And if you take that same commutator shape, rotate here for example, I can solve this case to here in 5 moves. So it will be an X rotation, D prime, M, D2, M prime, D. That's quite a nice one. The B and B prime setups can set up to 6 move cases like so. Here, to here, to here. You're setting up to that 4 mover. And back, and the same will go for this side obviously. And then a couple of MU algorithms work as well for example, if I want to shoot from here to here to here, there's a 7 move M, U prime, M prime, U2. To let you know as well that those algs aren't center safe. So if you're planning on solving your midges along with your corners by memorizing them last and solving them first, like a 3x3 stage, which you may opt to do, then those are going to affect your T centers only, because they all involve the M slice. So that's just a forewarning for you. If solving midges and corners first is something that you seriously want to do, having memorized them last, so sort of solving them as a 3x3 stage, then I'd recommend learning some 8 move center safe midge comms. And let's just think of some off the top of my head. Okay, so this case solves the inverse of the 4 move I showed you earlier. No rotation, so it's here to here to here. M, D2, M prime, U2. Twice. Another option is to manipulate advanced M2 just a little bit, so I'm going to set up this case here, here. That 5 mover from earlier, or the inverse of the 5 mover. So I want to keep my centers intact, I don't want to affect them in any way, and doing M slice 5 4 movers are going to affect these. So one option is to put this B out of the way, which gives me this, I call this B to D. If I now put D over here, I've essentially got the 8 move comm here to here to here now, which would be center safe. So if I now proceed to solve that, those are my 8 moves, and if I undo those setup moves from earlier, I've solved that 5 move case, even though it's a bit longer, but it's now center safe, and I'm going to keep all my centers intact. Other than that, there's not much else to say about midges. And for T centers, the concepts are exactly the same as for X centers as well, the stuff to get faster. The only difference with T centers on the 5x5 is that you have a couple of extra options. So we'll take the equivalent of this case, for example, adjacent phase comm, the nice simple one. How would it look on here? Like that. So that should be an alg you should already know, as like a basic alg. But by more options I mean you have the L slice to manipulate as well. So here to here to here. And going on those extra algs that I taught you earlier, this is how they'll look on the 5x5. So it will be here to here to here, which is a similar sort of shape. U, R2, U prime, M prime this time, and then this is how it looks on the other side. 1, 2, 3. It's just the mirror. But for T centers, the concepts are again exactly the same. It's practicing getting your thinking time down. Once you've got your thinking time down, start thinking ahead, start turning faster, start experimenting with interesting things like rotations as well. So I'll show you this example. Here to here to here. So my options here are rotating, flipping that up there, and then solving it sort of like that, which I don't really want to do. Just a Z rotation gives me a nice, easy 8 move commutator. Okay, so example solve time. So let's get scramble up. Do this in your solving orientation, so whatever colours you solve in. So first job is to look for a good orientation. There's a block there and there. That looks very good. I kind of wish I'd got this in a real scramble, but anyway, never mind. So the things I do first are I go for wings. So follow this in your orientation if you can. So J, for me, I'll just read it aloud. So for me it's J, F. I have two options here. It's either my brother, Johnny Frost, or a fellow friend of mine is Billy Jeffs, so I'm going to go for Billy Jeffs. Billy Jeffs is K-E. K-E is the word kinky for me. So Billy Jeffs is a kinky HW. So I can imagine Billy Jeffs in a kinky suit. Howard would go up to him, and that ends my cycle. I'd go to here instead, so AC. Howard starts bombing tennis balls at him, AC, because ace. VU is Vishnu. RB is the word rub, so Vishnu is rubbing. TD is a teddy bear. LC is either Lucy, which we've already got a person in our memorization, so I'm going to try the alternate word that I've got, which is like, it's sort of change, it's like loose change, loose for example. So I'll sort of just repeat that to myself one more time. Something along the lines of Billy Jeffs, JF, KE, kinky, Howard, HW is bombing tennis balls at him. So VU, Vishnu starts rubbing RB, a teddy bear, over LC. So just to make that an image I can actually picture, it would be Billy Jeffs in sort of like a Velcro suit, you never know, lycra or whatever. He would be, and then Howard would walk into whatever room this was going in. So this is going on in a car park with a tennis ball machine, AC. He switches it on. Vishnu comes over from afar and starts rubbing the teddy bear over his pockets. So I'd imagine hearing the sounds of it jangling in his pocket, and that gives me a 15, I think it's 15 targets now, or 14 targets in one image. So we'll carry on, and actually that ends the cycle. That's quite nice. So what's next? We'll go for M because it's sort of in line with my buffer and it might give me a nice case at the end. So M to P is a map. QM. QM's a bit rude, it's Quim, so just a fanny, vagina, whatever you want to call it. So on the wall there would be a map to, let's just make it a golden Quim, who knows. Break into a new cycle. NO, no, GN. I imagine going up to the map now, going no, or just something dramatic, I pull out a gun and shoot the map. And I have a feeling that's the entire memo done, because there's a solved corner, a solved edge here and a solved edge here, which works out just about right. If you want to at this stage, you can review just one more time. Just try not to go back to it later, because the less you can review, the better it will be for you. It's hard at first, but your brain literally wires itself to adjust. It brings in different brain cells and different connections between brain cells in order to accommodate for the new workload, per se. So actually your brain will adjust, even though it's hard at first, and when you feel yourself getting faster, it's really rewarding. So I'm going to hold on to that image now for a little bit longer and go on to my sensors. My buffer's here, so I'm going to go to U, that's for me, M, that's just the sound, so as if I'm thinking about something, UM, WN. WN is a whiny person, or Michael Winner, just from the car insurance adverts. So I go in, Michael Winner is QX. I think of, if you have it in your country, Nesquik, sort of like chocolate milk. So I think of chocolate milk. He's drinking chocolate milk, and I'm left with an F here. I don't have much option because it's a very easy scramble, so I'll have to go to F. If it's an F at the end, I'll imagine that person sort of farting. Just go with it. Okay. Next option for my other buffer here is D. I'll go from D, but if I go to here, I'll have to end the cycle early, so I'm going to try and avoid that first of all. Instead, go to D, P, J. Whenever I have a buffer that starts with D, I'll think of my dad in the image. So my dad is at the end, PJ in his pyjamas, T, O, G to finish off. Tog. For me, I'd make that up on the spot. It'll be the word toggle. So sort of a switch. He could be flicking a switch in his pyjamas. So just to go over that image again, it'll be walking into the room, Michael Winner, drinking chocolate milk. The chocolate milk would be causing him to fart. So that's how I'd link those two. It's linking them together as best as you can, basically. Finding like some meaning to the story really helps. Dad's in his pyjamas, flicking a toggle, and that completes our sentence nice and easy. And then the corners. My corners at the end, I do just one word syllables, so it's basically audio. So Wham, Dave, Yogurt, OG, and then this twisted thing here. So let's go. So unfortunately I screwed up that executing the, I was trying to execute a per special alg, which actually I've not done very slowly for a long time. I've always executed as fast as I can, so I'm going on pure muscle memory, as you probably already know. I'll just show you again. Slowly first. So as I was saying before, Matt Sheeran came across this one, and it's very, very nice because it solves a 12 move case, sort of very, very finger trick friendly as well. I suppose the main point of memorization, tips for memorization for 4 blind, is to basically realise that it's not much information at all. So the absolute raw information, I guess, is 52 pieces, but you've got to take into account that that's if you do a really, really bad orientation. You're going to orientate as many solved sentences as you can, so it's going to be between 40 letters to 46 letters at the very most, but it's about the same as a 2-cube multi. And once you realise that, you're going to change the way you memorise, really, because it's quick. It's going to be, 4 blind is one day going to be very, very quick for memorisation. So general tips for holding onto your 4 blind memo would be to make your images vivid as you memorize them. So what I mean by that is not just reading through the cube, passively taking in the information and then going back to it later and then trying to make the images vivid. Just go slower at first. Really focus on what those images are bringing up, what the memorization is bringing up in terms of images, how you can add detail for it, for example, whether something is a particular colour or smell. That's the second point. Bring in all senses that you can. So if something's putrid, rotten, disgusting, and it will have a horrible smell, for example, I would recommend imagining that smell. Imagine you're smelling it as you memorize. If something might make a particular sound, it'll be a funny or odd sound or scary sound, you never know. Imagine you can actually hear that sound as well. Try not to put in too much detail into images, of course, because small details, if you rush over them, you're more likely to forget them quicker. But use rooms, that's an obvious one, because even though it isn't that much information at start, when you're beginning at 4 blind, it will feel like a lot more information than it really is. So your brain's got to basically adjust. Also, I think I've mentioned this already, use a review if you need to. It might be important for you, but try to work your way up to a one-pass sort of system. So, for example, if I was to memorize the 4 blind now, I'd read through my wing set once, I'd possibly repeat it to myself in my head to know that I'd got it. I'd move on to my centers next. I would, if I needed to, make an image, otherwise I'd just say the sentences to myself. I wouldn't really visualize them. I'd say them once, and I'd move on to the corners and finish, because it's a lot easier to, if you're executing faster, to you don't need to hold on to the information for as long. Those are my general tips on 4 blind and getting faster. There's more than enough information out there already that should get you to around sub 3 for your memorization at the very least, if you're planning on going for sub 7, sub 6. Just so I don't go wrong during execution again, I'll just give you some general tips on 5 blind memorization. You've got the extra bits of information in forms of midges and T sensors, and you also have the fixed sensor caps here, which means you can't orient, basically, which gives you extra information to memorize. I would say a typical BLD, 5 BLD, is going to be around 80 letters, so a 4 cube multi. Imagine you're doing a 4 cube multi. I want to say that it isn't a lot of information, but it's not going to feel like a lot of, it's going to feel like lots of information until maybe you're sub 10. So that's not a general, it's not good advice. So you need to really make the most of your images now, and you need to really make the most of your rooms as well. Start thinking about what rooms you're going to use. Are the rooms big enough or imaginative enough to fit all this extra information in? How many rooms do I want to use? You've also got to think about not overfilling a room, so fitting in 20 targets into your very tiny downstairs closet or downstairs cupboard or whatever. Or that might be something for midges, for example, because it's only 12 pieces at the very most and maybe a visual flip. But that might be more appropriate, for example. In a big school hall where you might have 20 odd centres to memorise and a couple of different images to memorise them, that's probably a bit better. So it's really being a bit more efficient with how you place things in rooms. That's pretty important for 5 blind. The review has a much more important role here as well. While I try to recommend to people to wean off the review for 4 blind, 5 blind, it can be extremely useful. I still review, and to me it gets the initial information I've memorised in the first stages from about 80% to 100%. By that I mean I'll sort of read through wings, say it to myself in my head, then I'll read through midges, I'll say it to myself in my head, I'll go through then the X centres third of all, make sure I've got them all, and then I'll use the review. I'll do a very quick review of everything I've memorised so far, wings, midges and X centres, and that gets me from being about 80% sure to 100% sure. I can then move on to my T centres to put sentences in maybe the odd room, and then use audio sounds for the remaining bits, because it's making the most of short-term memory, and then go on to corners and then carry on with the solve. That's another point as well I should probably mention. If you decide you want to do a 3x3 stage at the end, then it's probably better to do a lot of free blind practice while you're doing 5x5 as well, because even though it's solving it like a free blind, it's going to take slightly longer, because midges are probably a bit more, as you can see, they're more likely to lock up. It's a bit harder to execute, and it's going to take you a bit longer than it would do normally on a free blind, so you're more likely to forget something. I'd recommend practicing that first of all. If you decide you just want to stick to corners, that's fine. That's good use of short-term memory. Sorry, but also try and think about maybe bringing in some other pieces into your short-term memory as well. I use these now because I generally find that I can execute these the fastest, and I'm often left with little cycles at the end, so 2s and 3s, which are quite easy to put into sort of audio sounds. So if I execute them first along with corners, I can generally save quite a lot of time and efficiency, be more efficient that way. 5 blind memo. It's not much different really. If you've ever tried multi, it's just a different types of pieces and different means of memorising them, so you're tracing rather than just reading 4, 5, 6 cubes in a row, and that takes some getting used to. One tip that helped for me for 5 blind is to maybe focus on that, because then you'll passively be improving your 4 blind as well, and I think Zane did this. He used to focus on 5 blind because it's got all the same pieces in, obviously, and as your memory improves for 5 blind, you'll find you naturally get better and better for 4 blind with not as much effort. If that's something you want to do, if that's something you want to put the time in and the effort in, and you have the mental stamina or the patience to do, then I think that brings really, really good results. Just don't overdo it. And that was going to be my final point on memorisation, because 5x5 can be very, very stressful, as can 4x4. It's still very taxing for the brain. It's a lot of information to know, and it's a lot of information to hold on to for a long time. It can burn you out, and you're more likely to fall into the BLD curse. So don't do too many solves is the obvious advice there, unless you build up that stamina. But don't force yourself to do big blind attempts when you know you're not feeling it, because the more tired you feel, the more likely you are to make mistakes anyway, and it's a vicious cycle. As you get more stress from DNFs, you get more tired, you get angrier. It's a downward cycle. Those are my general tips for getting faster for 4 and 5 blind. I'll leave some links in the description as well, because there's plenty of good resources out there already on how to improve your memory. Those are just my general things that work for me. So I hope you enjoyed this part of the video. Thank you.